Well, this is a part 2 video of what to look for / expect when purchasing or owning a 94 to 96 Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham. Yes, there's a second part to this video. After reading several comments, it came to my attention that I actually missed or left out a few minor details of what can go wrong on these cars, and well, I happen to be experiencing some of the problems that were mentioned in the comments. So, without further ado, let's get this shit on the road. Okay, so one of the most common problems that these cars have is the intake manifold. Your car might have a misfire or a hesitation. A lot of people usually say it's the Opti-Spark, which can very well be. But the intake manifold, if there is a problem with the seal, it will cause some of these problems. So the intake manifold on this car is located right underneath the home plate. And this intake manifold is prone to leaking out the front or the rear. Most commonly it leaks in the rear. To tell if it's leaking, look behind or look down in here. This is what confuses a lot of people. They think that the rear main seal is going when it might be the intake manifold. What happens is the oil drips from the top of the engine onto the transmission. Where the transmission and oil pan are, the oil runs down and just drips ever so slightly. Sometimes it will drip onto the exhaust, which is one of them right here. That's the catalytic converter. The other one is on the opposite side, and you'll have a faint, or not a faint, but a very noticeable oil smell. Another issue that can happen on these cars is the EGR valve. This was another comment that was mentioned. The EGR valve is right there. It's that thing that appears to have either a June bug or a leaf stuck in it. The EGR valve has a diaphragm that allows it to open and close, right in the middle there. And sometimes the diaphragm dries out and it causes it to lose vacuum, and then you have that awkward misfire or rough idle. But mine appears to be working fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Well, as far as I know. When I filmed the first video, I had mentioned about the Opti-Spark on this car. How I haven't had any issues, and how I said that I pray to God that I don't. Well, again, the Achilles heel of this car, the Opti-Spark, is in fact acting up. I believe it to be acting up because on damp, wet days, like after it rains, when you go to start the car, it stutters, it doesn't idle properly. You'll see in this video right after this. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is the tachometer. So if I rev the engine just slightly, it causes the number on the digital climate control to change. Right now we're at a high idle because this is a cold start, so it's going to idle at 0.9. I'm not sure if that is 9,000 RPMs or if that's 900 RPMs. I really don't know what that is. I have to check the service manual. So right now the car is running like it normally should. It's not raining out today, it's not damp. Well, I shouldn't say it's damp, it's cold and it feels kind of wet outside. But throw it in reverse and see if it does that weird stuttering problem. It's really stuttering right now. And every time it does that, the tachometer on the gauge changes. And the car, every time when it does the stuttering problem, the car just kind of does this shake, 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 and I don't know. And whenever I apply the brakes when driving, when it's doing this, the car kind of like stutters as I'm braking, so it's very annoying. What's it like in drive? Yeah, it's really bad actually. If I put it in park, seems better. It idles right where it's supposed to be. When it's kind of warmed up, it stays at about 7. So yeah, the car drives perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong when you drive it and give it gas. Only when you're stopped and when the car's idling, it seems to do that. Like, I mean, right now, I don't even notice the stuttering or anything because it's not happening. It only does it when the car is stopped, either in reverse or drive. So yeah, that kind of sucks. And it doesn't make it any easier with this car because it has the mechanical fan. Now, there's a lot of people who say that, oh, you have the heavy duty cooling package, oh, that is amazing, yada yada yada. No, it's not. When you have the mechanical fan, it's more work, and of course if you take it to a garage, that's more in labor. Because this top shroud has to come off, there's a separate belt that has to come off, and there's the fan right there, there's the pulley, and of course the bracket is blocking the water pump, which is it really sucks. So yeah, this is one extra thing that you have to remove, whereas on other cars like this, it doesn't have the fan shroud or anything. You just have your radiator and you have this big empty space to work with. Unfortunately for me, yeah. And since this fan has been on here for such a long time, I don't think it's going to be able to come off very easily. I really think it's going to give me a big problem. So, yeah, there's that. So yes, the Opti-Spark is definitely going to be a problem. Now, there are ways to bypass the Opti-Spark. There's a really, really good method of bypassing it. This website, I don't know the first name of it, I'll put it in a caption in the video, but it says Direct Opti. And what they do is they give you 4 coil packs, and it's a full plug-and-play kit. All you have to do is find a place to put your coil pack around here somewhere, and then everything, all the wires and stuff, hook up direct and everything like that. And yeah, basically it almost deletes the Opti-Spark. The only thing that the Opti-Spark is used for is just for the sensor, the cam position sensor, which doesn't, if anything, it doesn't really go bad. It's just the cap and rotor that usually fail. So I think that might be my next option on this car. I really have to decide what I want to do, because I got a leaking intake manifold, and I have a rusted out oil pan which is patched, and several issues with the floors in the car. I don't know. I think I'm better off just buying another one like this in better shape. These cars, being the fact that they're 22 years old, the power steering pump, yeah, power steering pump, they go bad on these. If you ever go out to start the car on a minus 1 degree, minus 4 degree day, and you hear this loud whining sound, that is the power steering pump. Yeah, and if you drive the car and you hear this whining sound, that is the power steering pump. In my previous video, I had mentioned that the heater cores in these cars clog up very easily. When you go to look at the vehicle before buying it, check the antifreeze to make sure that it isn't sludgy like this. If it is, that's because the car uses Dexcool antifreeze. It's the orange colored stuff. I would suggest replacing it with the green 50-50 mix. It won't hurt anything. It will just save your heater core and your water pump from utter failure. While you're checking the car out, look underneath in front of the radiator. You will see these 2 lines. They are called oil cooler lines. On these General Motor cars, they are notorious for leaking, and they usually leak where the metal fitting connects to the rubber hose. I've had to have them replaced 3 times on my car, and I keep checking just to make sure that they're not leaking. 22 years of being out in the elements and just enduring all of the harsh weather that Mother Nature has to throw at these cars. You will notice the gray trim going around all of the windows on the doors is starting to peel, and it's missing in some areas. It doesn't really affect anything, it just makes the car look really, really bad, and this is what mine looks like. All 4 doors look like this. The suspension on this car has a electronic air ride suspension. Unlike the Crown Victorias and other Ford vehicles that just use airbags, this car has a coil spring and a shock absorber. So when the shock absorber gives out, your car isn't really sagging on the ground like a Ford does, because it still has the springs to support it. When a Ford's suspension goes, its ass is on the ground practically. This car had the original 22-year-old AC Delco shocks, and the oil had leaked out, and the car would vibrate violently down the road. The ride was very, very rough. It would bounce a lot too. Given the condition of this car and, you know, the several things that are wrong with it, I opted not to pay the $1,000 to have the air ride and stuff hooked up again, because you got to deal with the airlines and all that stuff, and if there's a problem with the airlines, if there's a kink somewhere, you got to deal with that, and if the pump doesn't work half the time, then yeah. To tell if an air ride suspension is bad on one of these cars, the first thing you got to do is push on the bumper and see if the car bounces. If it bounces, that means the shocks are no longer good. If you hear the sound of a pump running while the car is turned off, that means it's unable to raise the car. Now, with this car, instead of paying the $1,000 for the replacement shocks to get it back to ride quality, I just decided to go with coilover shocks. These coilover shocks are fairly reliable, actually. When my original shocks were on here, this wheel skirt would be right about there. Now it sits above the center cap, and I thought, wow, that's it sits a lot higher in the rear than it ever has. And the rear coil shocks, these are coilover shocks that I put on here. Yeah, you can see them right there, that coil spring wrapped around. And then behind that is the soft coil spring. And then there's the shock with the spring on it. A lot of people have argued the fact that these coilover shocks would cause the ride to be very stiff and very uncomfortable, almost like driving a truck. Well, it really depends on personal taste. I mean, I've driven this car now for 4 years with the original 22-year-old shocks that had seen better days when I got the car. And to be quite honest with you, with these other shocks on here, I don't really notice a difference in the ride quality. The only thing that I notice that's different is the vibrating problem have stopped. But if you're one of those hardcore people who wants originality and wants to spend the money and who actually has the money to pay for that fancy thing, fine. But for me, I went with the rear coilovers, and I think it was the best investment I ever made. That's just my personal opinion. These shocks are also adjustable, so if I load this thing up with computers or anything like that, I can just crawl under the car and just twist a nut, and it raises the rear end up a bit. So it helps. Whereas this car, or whereas the air system would just keep pumping air in as needed, and then you got to deal with the stupid sensors that aren't working and all that crap. Typically that does happen. There's a level sensor, and if it goes bad, the car will sit too high, and then once it sits low, it will pump on, and yeah, it's not fun. When you buy one of these cars, make sure you take a look underneath, and I mean really take a look. This is your drive shaft, and this is the differential. If you see fluid leaking out from this area, if you see that it's wet, you might want to consider walking away or ask the owner if they have any documentation about changing the differential fluid or if any maintenance has been done. Since I've had this car, this differential has had a slight weep to it, and I've just been monitoring the fluid level. But yeah, where the drive shaft connects to the differential, I believe the seal has gone and it's just weeping out a little bit. It looks like a lot, but believe it or not, one little drop actually spreads out quite a bit. And this leak has been going on for 4 years now, and given the fact that this car has so many problems, I'm just not going to bother with it. Just keep topping it up, and yeah. And it's not a steady leak either, like there's no drip on the ground or anything like that, but it's just a good thing to keep an eye out for. Another thing too, these cars have these cool looking reverse lights. They're plastic, obviously. But over time, the plastic clips that hold them in get brittle, and you have the light that moves like that, which indicates that the clips that hold it in are broken. So, and getting replacement ones that are as shiny as this one, it's almost impossible. And eBay sellers want ridiculous money for them. This one is also kind of broken too. The bumpers on these cars, I don't know what it is, but I think it has something to do with the plastic trim here. There are plastic clips that hold these trim pieces on, and I think over time water gets in between the chrome plating and the metal, and it ends up bubbling. You can see right where this tape is here. This is the bumper starting to rust from underneath the chrome. It is very, very common on these cars. I've seen a lot of them that have gaping holes in the bumper, and there's no stopping this. You have to literally get the chrome off and redo it. Happens all the time with these cars. I have yet to see one around Canada with a perfect bumper. Even the front bumper does the same thing. I did a video about the power antenna on these cars. This is an aftermarket antenna from antennamasterus.com. They sell antennas for various makes and models, and they come from Wisconsin. Well, when you're dealing with an aftermarket setup, it's not going to be a direct bolt-on, and there's a video of me explaining how I hooked this up. But I'll show you a picture of why the other one was not reusable. The plastic spooler gear was completely worn on one side, and the antenna mast wouldn't go down all the way because it was completely worn on that gear. So if you buy a car like this and if the antenna is halfway down, the antenna mast cable could be broken, or the spooler drum could be worn out completely and it's not able to drive it down all the way. One of the nice things about these cars is the mirrors, the side mirrors being able to fold in. That's a nice feature. However, if you are considering buying one of these cars, and if you have a garage, and after buying the car and you take the car home, you decide to park it and find out, oh shit, the garage is slightly too narrow for the car, well, you're going to have to make sure before buying the vehicle that your mirrors are able to fold in. This one folds in like that. No, nothing wrong with it. Of course, this is a after market mirror. You can tell color is definitely not the same. This is what happens when a mirror does not want to fold in. Yeah, that mirror is stiff. It will not fold in. And I've checked for clearance and all that stuff. There's, yeah, this is what happens when it stays in the open position for 22 years and doesn't get folded. And, yeah. So, this mirror, in order to properly fix it, the whole thing has to be disassembled. Glass has to come out. Maybe a little bit of penetrating oil will help free it up, but it's not likely. Because it's all plastic moldings and stuff in here, and if they break, well, then you're really screwed. So, gotta keep an eye out for that too. You ever notice whenever you drive and passenger beside you says, "Oh, my feet are cold. Can you direct the air to the floor?" And you say, "Sure, no problem." Push the button, doink. And then find out that it comes out the air vents, even though it's pointing to the floor. Yeah. Turns out that the blend door actuator on the bottom, somewhere underneath the dash, I can't crawl under there and show you exactly where it is, but there's a blend door gear that kind of gets stuck sometimes and just needs to be lubricated. I've noticed this a lot on these cars, and I noticed it last week when I was driving. I found out I had a passenger in the car, and they said to me, "Hey, can you direct the airflow to the floor because my face is burning off because the heat was so hot?" I said, "Sure." So I pushed the floor button, and they're like, "I don't feel anything. It's still coming out the air vents." I was like, "Oh, well, that's weird." We pulled out a gas stop to gas up. I started the car back up, and then noticed that the vent finally moved, and there was heat coming out near the floors, and I thought, "Oh, wow, it's working now." But as soon as I switched the position and switched it back to floor, it wouldn't work again. So, yeah. If you plan on driving these cars in the winter, make sure that your blend door actuators are working properly, or else you're going to have cold feet like I do. Since we're on the topic about the blend door and all that stuff, let's talk about the climate control. Now, when you buy one of these cars, you may be very disappointed with how the climate control system works. This climate control system here is from a 1995 Buick Roadmaster. Now, there's a reason why I put this in here. You see, originally, this car had a climate control system that had buttons that were shiny like this one. It was a nice looking system. It actually looked pretty sleek, pretty good. But it sucked. It really, really sucked. The original climate control only gave you two fan options. You had low speed, and then you had the high speed. And that was it. This one gives you 5 fan speed options. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 being the lowest. You also have three blend options. You have floor, which doesn't seem to work on mine because it's pointing to the floor, but it's blasting air out through the vents. You have your blend, which makes the air come out the bottom, middle, and windshield vent. And then you have the middle, which strictly pushes it out through these vents. And yeah. And if you wanted to just come out the dash vents, you push this button here. So, yeah. So that's the difference between this one and the original. Actually, this one too has kind of a nicer graphical design. When you push these buttons, it kind of shows a little arrow pointing to where the airflow is going. So that's kind of a nice touch. But the one thing that really makes this climate control stand out is the color of the display. It doesn't have this dark overlay. This one, yeah, I thought about finding something to put over top of it, but I just gave up. I'm not going to waste my time on it. So yeah, there's that. Another problem with these cars that you might find when buying one, or if you currently own one, you may notice the dashboard having huge cracks on it. Well, mine doesn't have any cracks because I put protectant stuff on it, and I also put a solar blanket on the dashboard to keep it from cracking. But it's very common on these cars that the dashboard cracks around here, right there, and sometimes straight in the middle. This car, believe it or not, the dashboard looks perfectly fine. But I noticed, and this is how crazy I am with my cars, I noticed out the corner of my eye while I was driving one day, there's a tiny hairline crack just forming right there. And it's only going to get bigger. So, yeah, hard to believe. I'm sitting right here and I'm driving and I just look and it's like, oh, wow, there's a tiny crack starting. Yeah. With these cars you can notice a lot, and I certainly noticed that one. But I didn't do too bad. I mean, I'm glad that my dashboard doesn't look completely cracked and whatnot. I'll throw some pictures up to show you guys the different scenarios that you'll encounter with this car. And it's not with just this car, it's also with the Buick Roadmaster, Chevy Impala, Chevy Caprice, Oldsmobile Custom Cruiser. They're all like this. The dashboards are all prone to cracking, and people usually just throw a dash mat on it, which, to be quite honest, doesn't look all that appealing, but I mean, hey, whatever floats your boat or sinks it, depending on what situation you're in. Another thing on these cars is that the Prindle cable, and this is really all cosmetics and just whatnot, but the Prindle cable on these cars are prone to breaking. And a Prindle cable is what moves this orange indicator. They are prone to breaking right in the middle of the cable. And you'll notice one day when you go to put your car in reverse and the little indicator doesn't move. In order to fix that, you have to pull out the instrument cluster panel. You don't have to remove the whole cluster. Believe me, it's simpler than you think. You just have to undo the fake wood cover, and you have to undo, I believe, 2 screws right here around in this area, and then take the cable out and replace it with a different one. Or you can just try to fix it like I did. I just super glued the 2 pieces back together and just clamped them with a pair of pliers and just let the glue dry. Threw it back in, and now my indicator cable works. And yeah, haven't had a single problem with it. So there's that. Another issue with these cars when you're driving, you may notice the anti-lock brake and traction control light illuminate in the dash. All that really means is that you no longer have anti-lock brakes, so when you slam on the brakes, your car will, your tires will lock up and your car will screech to a stop. Whereas with functioning anti-lock brakes, the car will just kind of pulse as it stops. The traction control limits wheel spin on slippery road surfaces. Well, when that's not working, well, you'll just spin your tires out like I do on this thing. And the traction control switch, when the system is working properly, you can easily turn it off. And I don't know why they put the button here, but you open the glove box, and the traction control switch is... Hold on, I gotta get a light. I don't know why they did it this way, but this is so stupid. They have a nice little label telling you where the switch is, but when you're driving, you can't really see it from there. And you're like this. Where I can't fucking find it. Oh, there it is. It's right all the way the hell up there. Huh. Well, all you have to do is just push the switch, and it turns it on or off. And you'll tell if your traction control is turned on or off by an indicator up here saying traction enabled, traction disabled, whatnot. But yeah, this car does not have a functioning anti-lock brake system or traction control system because, again, it's just not worth it. And besides that, I don't mind driving a car with no anti-lock brakes. In fact, I kind of like it. Slam on the brakes and you scare the shit out of a few people. If you currently own one of these cars, or if you're considering buying one, you might want to pay attention to the noises and the sounds. Now, as these cars get older, the rubber seals around the doors tend to shrink a little bit due to age and just because of natural wear and tear. You may notice a lot of wind noise while driving, and you might be able to hear you can hear a lot of noise coming in from outside. It's because the rubber seal around this door is not in the greatest shape, because this is the door that's most commonly used. And the constant opening and closing causes the rubber to get squished, and, well, eventually you're going to have a lot of outside noise coming inside the cabin. Yeah, if you plan on buying one of these cars, you might want to replace the rubber weather stripping. It will also reduce the sound of the noise from outside, and it will potentially keep water from getting in. One of the most common problems with these cars that I've seen, every time when I go to the scrapyard to look for parts, I notice that this panel here is gone. That is because the door lock switch is held in with two plastic clips like that, and over time, when you push the button constantly, one of these clips breaks off, and then the switch falls into the door. That is easily repaired. All you have to do is remove that screw in there, pop the panel out, and then just super glue around the edge of the switch, and it won't fall out ever again. I've done this to this door and that door, and I've never had a problem with it. Yeah, forgot another problem with these cars. If you plan on buying one, or if you currently already own one, this may have already happened. This switch here that's mounted to the side bolster of the seat is not designed very well, and the bracket is right... Actually, you can see the bracket right in there. Well, what happens every time when you sit on the seat, it causes this bracket to rub and tear through the leather seat. This is what it looks like on this side. Oh yeah, look at that. And also, if you do plan on buying one of these cars, and if it has the heated seat option, well, don't be too disappointed if it doesn't work. Mine stopped working on me last year. Passenger side one still works because hardly anyone sits in that side and uses that heating element. So yeah. And another thing too is the seatbelt pillar. This is cheap aftermarket fabric, but these are prone to tearing on both sides. It looks like this one's already starting to tear too. But yeah, these will look horrible, and really the best thing to do is just to remove them. If you're one of those people who goes out to start your car on a hot day or on a cold day and turn on your climate control system, either hot or cold, and you decide to leave the car idling in the driveway, don't be surprised when you come back out that the doors automatically lock on you. Yeah, this happens. Over time, these gear shift levers, they get a little flimsy. I don't know what it is about them, but they get very, very flimsy. And just slightly touching it. So the car is currently in park right now, so if I push up on the lever, it's supposed to unlock. Doors are unlocked. I remove my finger. They lock. Damn it. So what I'm saying to you is if you go out and close the door, your car might lock on its own, and that's because of the shifter lever. Damn it. There we go. There we go. Damn it. Not only does the shifter act up, but whenever you touch the steering wheel, sometimes the doors will lock. I don't know why, but it does that. Not doing it now, but still. Good. Anyway, that just about covers all of the crap that can go wrong with this car. So far, to my knowledge. I think I might store this car away for a while, because it's getting to be a real pain in the ass to maintain. I just can't believe right after that video that I had made, I started having the intake manifold leak and then the Opti-Spark problem all in one shot. This was it was completely ridiculous, and it still is ridiculous, because it's like, you know, if this car was properly maintained before I got it, maybe I wouldn't be having a lot of these issues. And I'm contemplating selling this thing. I think my best bet would be to just sell this thing and try to find something that has been maintained, that's in better shape, and just, yeah. I think I'm better off, but it's so hard to find a black-on-black Cadillac around here. Like, I mean, they didn't make that many of them. Well, they did, but just, you know, you don't see them. And when you do see them, they want crazy money. Thanks for watching.